Chris Biderman of the Candlestick Chronicles and the Sacramento Bee, all guests and callers. Join us from the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Chris Biderman, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us, as always, my guy.
I'm fantastic, and I appreciate you guys having me on, as always.
So let's start here. The game last night, we finally got to see the Kings face. It feels like the Kings have played the same 5 teams, right? This was only the second Eastern Conference team that the Kings have played besides the Cavaliers. Anything stick out to you that you saw yesterday? I haven't seen that much of Cam Thomas, even though I know the name. That guy can chuck it up. He likes to shoot the basketball. But from the Kings side, besides the Malik Monk attempted 360 layup, was there anything else that stuck out to you from the game last night?
Yeah, I think we've sort of been waiting for the Kings offense to look like more like it did last year on a consistent basis. And I think they're starting to get to that point, right? Like setting a record, a franchise record for threes will certainly point in that direction. It seems like Keegan Murray's getting a little bit more comfortable. And obviously, you know, when Keegan gets going, that takes their offense to a completely different level. So, I think the Kings are starting to round into form. I don't know that, you know, expecting the numbers to be exactly the same as last year or improving from last year was reasonable, just because, you know, defenses are going to adjust, and it's pretty hard to replicate having the best offensive rating in NBA history. But with Keegan Murray, you know, rounding into form, being a little bit more efficient, I would expect really good things from the Kings offense going forward. And it's been a different year for Keegan. He's taking on obviously a much larger defensive role. What he does offensively and what they're asking him to do offensively is a lot different. I was talking to a member of the coaching staff recently, and basically they pointed out to me that, like, as a rookie, they really only asked Keegan to be a spot up shooter, more or less, right? And now obviously you guys see it. He's doing a lot more ball handling, a lot more playmaking, decision making than he did last year. And I think, you know, the increased responsibilities were on both sides of the ball were obviously a reason why he got off to such a slow start offensively. But if he rounds into form and becomes the player they envision him becoming, that takes them to a different level. Because for me, like, for the Kings to really be a true blue-blooded contender in the Western Conference, I think Keegan Murray needs to ascend to an all-star type player. With what you're getting from Malik Monk and obviously what you get from Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, I think you need Keegan to take that leap to take some of the burden off the All-Stars. So far, or I guess as we get towards, you know, Christmas and the New Year, I would expect Keegan to get better, and that's obviously a good sign for the Kings.
Chris, looking at the NBA standings right now, especially in the West, I mean, there's 10 teams in the West right now that are above 500. How do you feel like the Kings are kind of positioning themselves throughout the start of this year so far? I believe this is their best start since, you know, the early 2000s, the start of season. Just what are your thoughts on how they're kind of positioned at this moment in time, 5th seed in the West?
Yeah, I think, you know, like last year as the 3 seed, you look at what their record was, that was probably more emblematic of what a 5 or 6 seed would be typically, you know, like given that it was just kind of a down year for the Western Conference. So I did think it would be a little bit more difficult overall for the Kings this year. And given that they've had to weather more injuries, obviously, and that the West is better, I think they're showing signs that they are improving, and they do deserve, obviously, to be considered among the better teams in the Western Conference. And we'll see how it goes, right? Like, it's you know, I think the trade deadline is going to be fascinating. Whether or not the Kings are in the mix to dramatically improve their roster or not is going to be interesting for sure. And if they don't, is it another team in the Western Conference that's making that move for OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam? Maybe a team in the Pacific Division potentially, right? Like, so there are a lot of variables to go moving forward, but given the way the Kings have dealt with the injuries, and given the fact that the conference is overall better, and given that the Kings record is better than last year, I would say that's a promising sign that this team's still on the up and up.
Talking to Chris Biderman of the Candlestick Chronicles and the Sacramento Bee. Chris, switching over to the 49ers. Look, I've already teased this in the last segment. Chris can ask you about the Seahawks game if he wants. To me, it felt like the Niners did everything we thought the Niners were going to do. I want to ask you about this, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I've been talking about this for the last couple of days because it's starting to get to the point, Chris, where if everybody is saying how disrespected somebody is, My question is he actually being disrespected, right? So Brock Purdy, every time he throws a pass, Chris, the ball is still in the air, and Niners fans and content creators, I thought he was just check down Charlie. I mean, the ball is still in the air, Chris. And you got a guy, if you actually look at this, who is gone from mystery relevant to top 2 and MVP odds, an MVP front runner in less than 2 full seasons. Is he actually disrespected, or do Niner fans just like the idea of him being disrespected from a couple talking heads like the Nick Wrights of the world who know what they're doing poking the bear? Do you actually think that Brock Purdy is still disrespected?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is by a certain, like a small contingent of the NFL punditry. Sure. Like I think, look, we all listen to podcasts and we all listen to analysis, and we read things, and there's still a certain segment, whatever size it is. I do think it's shrinking as time goes on, but there is a segment who is taking the idea that Brock Purdy is an ideal scenario with great playmakers and an ideal scheme. They're using that against him. They're taking that away from him, right? But I'll make the point over and over again, like Peyton Manning always had elite weapons. Joe Montana always had elite weapons. Tom Brady had Randy Moss and Rob Gronkowski, right? It's just all part of it. Like, if you are an elite offense in the NFL, it's never going to be just a quarterback and a bunch of scrub playmakers. It's going to be a good quarterback and good playmakers and a good scheme. Like, that's what you have to win Super Bowls in the NFL. That's what the 49ers are trying to do. And Brock Purdy is, I like, both things are true, right? Brock Purdy is playing at an extremely high level, and he has an ideal circumstances around him. So, I think it's a little ridiculous to use his playmakers against him. Like, we don't talk about Joe Montana and say, well, he had Bill Walsh and Jerry Rice, so he was a little overrated, right? Ultimately, what Brock Purdy does in the playoffs, and if he wins a Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls, that's going to speak for itself. And ultimately, that's the most important thing when it comes to the way Joe Montana got evaluated, the way Steve Young eventually got evaluated, the way Tom Brady, et cetera, right? Like, it's all about winning, and winning is the most important thing. And I think there's still a segment of people who are tied to the fact that he was the last pick in the draft, who are tied to the fact that he's not 6'4" and he doesn't have a rocket arm, but he's playing at a higher level than just about any other quarterback in the league right now. And yes, obviously he benefits from the supporting cast that he has, and Kyle Shanahan dialing up the plays, but he's good at everything the 49ers are asking him to do. Right. There isn't anything that he's not holding back the 49ers offense in any way that maybe Jimmy Garoppolo was, whether it was turnover worthy plays or being unable to push the ball downfield or being unable to make plays outside the structure of the offense. Brock Purdy is really good at all of those things, and he's taken this 49ers offense to a different level. And I think people, when looking at the success of the 49ers, should say, yeah, Brock Purdy's a part of it. His coaching staff is obviously a part of it. His playmakers are a part of it, and it's all clicking. And it's why the 49ers are favorites to win the Super Bowl right now.
Chris, the Christian McCaffrey run was just absolutely incredible to start off that game. Sorry if this isn't, really football analytical, it might be more of a rah-rah kind of question, but what does that run and, Brandon Ayuk blocking downfield and Brock Purdy picking him up pretty much the second McCaffrey hit the ground? What does a run like that tell you about this team?
They're just bought in, right? Like, these guys are all these guys are all in on doing whatever it takes to win a championship, right? Like, these guys are all at the points in their career where they don't really care about individual accolades as much as maybe they would be if they were on worse teams, right? Like, you have, Brandon Ayuk's obviously trying to get paid, but he obviously wants to win. Like, the thing with Brandon Ayuk is he wants to win. Deebo Samuel wants to win. He already got paid. Trent Williams has been in the league forever. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's arguably the best left tackle we've ever seen. He just wants to win a Super Bowl, right? So George Kittle had the best from a receiving yards perspective for a tight end in 2018. He broke that record. Obviously, Travis Kelce broke it since then. But, like, these guys have all pros. They have Pro Bowls on their ledgers. Like, they just want to win Super Bowls, and they're entirely bought in on trying to get there and do what it takes to win with those extra effort plays and supporting their teammates. And They understand how much urgency there is because this doesn't last forever, right? Like these guys have lived their whole lives to try to win Super Bowls, and they've been in a window now that is a small fraction of their football careers. And they're saying, look, like whether it's this year, next year, the year after that, there's a very small time in your life as an NFL player where you can actively try to win Super Bowls. And the 49ers are square in the middle of that right now. And it's very clear that all their best players have an immense appreciation for that. And that's one of the reasons why the team is where it's at right now.
Chris Biderman, thank you so much for joining us. Candlestick Chronicles and the Sacramento Bee. We will talk to you again next week.
Yep. Appreciate it. You guys have a good one.
All right. You too, man. Okay. Got to get to a break. When we get back, continuing to talk Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers.